You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Homefield Apparel. And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 285th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 935th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of April 6th, 2023. I am your host, Jared Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
Well, unfortunately, for the 36th straight season, a university other than Indiana has captured the national championship. UConn joined Indiana and Duke in the 5-banner club, with only North Carolina, Kentucky, and UCLA having more. And UConn doing it from the exact same seed line Indiana was on is a reminder of the step forward the program took this season, thanks in large part to the efforts of Trace Jackson-Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino, both of whom this week made official their plans to move on to the NBA. But if you think their impact on the future of Indiana basketball is done, think again. Trace is Woody's best player development story to date. He went from an unlikely NBA draft pick 2 years ago to now being a fringe first-round prospect. Wherever he gets drafted, the development of Trace's skills like shot blocking, switching on to perimeter players, and passing have him set up to be a valuable NBA role player at minimum. And that is certainly one reason why Indiana is hosting Oregon transfer big Khalil Ware on an official visit right now. The former McDonald's All-American struggled in his one season at Oregon and surely is intrigued by how Mike Woodson can similarly help him revive his NBA draft stock. As for Hood-Schifino, his story may have an even bigger impact on the recruiting trail than Trace's. Not only is Jalen a potential lottery pick, but his freshman season is proof that Woody is willing to trust a young ball handler whose talent and maturity warrant it. This will certainly help in landing future high school recruits who project to have immediate impact, as well as transfers who want to showcase the types of reads and skills that NBA scouts look for. Plus, it doesn't hurt that Hood-Schifino has been helping out IU's recruiting efforts by texting recruits and talking about how much he enjoyed his IU experience. Credit to Jeff Rabjohns, who dropped that nugget on their message board earlier this week. So as the good news from the portal trickles in, Ware is on his official visit right now, along with Chris Ledlam from Harvard, while there are rumblings of potentially getting Dalton Connect from Northern Colorado on campus as well. It's important to remember that as much as NIL and playing time and the tradition of IU basketball are all important, closing a recruit still comes down to relationships and the overall impact of your sales pitch. And through 2 seasons, not only has Woody stabilized IU basketball on the court with 2 straight trips to the NCAA tournament, he's also accumulated several success stories that will help him paint a favorable picture to Indiana's top targets. And with the current holes on Indiana's roster, the time is now to start turning those stories and relationships into impact commitments that will keep the positive momentum going next season. All right, now let me introduce my co-host this week. Andy is off, dutifully attending to his duties as a father and husband, I'm sure. Ryan is also off this week, probably somewhere burning a hole in his keyboard, live tweeting San Diego Padres games. In fact, just 5 minutes ago, he sent out a tweet about watching Blake Snell pitch is not good for your mental health. So yes, folks, I'm sorry to say it is that time of year again, if you are following the Rumors and Rants account. But here with me to my left, he is a longtime high school basketball coach in the state of Indiana and the founder of Delphi Bracketology.
He remembers the days when a movie cost $1. Heaven help you if you ever decide to pop your collar. Play hard, but remember, fake hustle is a crime. He's the coach and it's Tonsoni time.
Well, Coach, you know, Tony has a very important question here in the chat. Now that you've announced that you're in the transfer portal for different post-game shows, how are the offers coming in for you?
Well, they've been quite incredible, but I'm turning down all offers, and I want to continue to be here for everyone. So I'm not moving anywhere. It would have to take an outstanding offer, and Notre Dame doesn't have that kind of cash. So I'm staying.
At least not to spend on basketball.
Yeah, on podcasts, some old guy talking basketball, right? But anyway, yeah, it's an exciting time because of the transfer portal, and it's interesting to follow commentary online about, is this better for college basketball? Is this not better? Regardless of how you feel about that, it is here. And in Indiana's situation where you're losing some seniors and some players into the NBA, it is an exciting time because you have a chance to keep the momentum going. And then we just need to define what that momentum is. It's hard to replace 7 guys at one time and get back to the Final Four. We're going to hope for that and root for that, obviously. But you want to keep that momentum going of being competitive in the Big Ten and try to get to that Sweet 16, and you're going to have to do a good job in that portal. But one of the things I will stress all night tonight as we talk about these players is to have patience. I know when you hear someone is interested in Indiana and there's a Zoom meeting, we want to win that recruit, but they have 5 to 15 teams that they're interested in or are contacting these players. A lot of programs, a lot of good coaches, a lot of good programs finish second and third on these recruitments. So you want to make sure it's a good fit. You don't want your coaching staff rushing into anything just because it's the first time. Those Zoom meetings tell a lot to the coaching staff on whether they want that young man in or not, regardless of what we do as fans. So let's make sure we're somewhat patient, but remain excited to get some of these guys in the Indiana uniforms.
Alrighty, so here's what we have in store this week, and that is all very well said, Coach. It's not always easy to have patience, but it's certainly, we do have to have some patience right now. And trust me, like we've been kind of on that train, hey, let's be patient. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. We'll definitely let you know when we don't feel that way, if that comes, because there will come a point in time in this offseason if there are no commitments and we're kind of staring down the barrel of, entering next season with holes on the roster, we'll let you know. But I think for now, patience is certainly warranted, and it definitely looks like the coaches have some good irons in the fire. And we'll talk about that because I think we're starting to see, ideally, the kind of roster that they want to build, and I think there's some intriguing things there. So here's what we have in store this week. We got some Hoosier headlines, a few different things to go through from an Indiana perspective and also from a Big Ten perspective. In segment 2, we are going to hit hard IU's transfer portal targets. There's a group of 4, 5, 6 guys that have really emerged as kind of the top guys right now. Coach and I will talk about them. We've got Matt Cox from 3-Man Weave who's going to join us for segment 2 and give us his perspective on those guys. So we'll run through all those, and then we got a bunch of good questions in the mailbag that we will get to as well. All of that coming this week on Assembly Call Radio. But first, we got to talk about our presenting sponsor.
Home field apparel, wear one for the team.
It's not just we have to. We love talking about our presenting sponsor, and probably 95% of shows, all of us are wearing home field apparel. We don't have to. It's just that when we go to our closet, that's pretty much all we have. So Coach over here tonight is modeling the new home field apparel shirt, which has a very questionable color scheme, I have to say, but is a cool design. Did you get that as part of the mystery package for March Madness? So Home Field did this fun mystery thing. What other 5 shirts did you get? Do you remember
I got a Miami one.
You got a Miami.
It's pretty cool. It's got the Ibis. I wore it today for the Masters green shirt for the Masters. I got a Kansas State. I got an Arizona.
Okay.
I'm trying to, and I got Houston. So those the 5 schools plus then this Home Field shirt.
Very nice. And Home Field is always doing fun stuff like this. They're also doing fun stuff like when a big event happens, they'll grab licensing and get a shirt out really real quickly. I never thought I'd be wearing a Fairleigh Dickinson shirt, but I'm wearing a Fairleigh Dickinson shirt today. I also caved, Coach.
Just got mine.
Did you get yours? Very nice.
And that's
what Home Field Apparel does, man. They put great designs on really comfortable clothing, crew necks, T-shirts, hoodies. They've got hats now, jackets. I mean, they continue to expand. They're doing great things. We love Home Field Apparel. We know you'll love them too. Go to homefieldapparel.com. Use our promo code HOME, HOME, and you will get 15% off your first order. That's promo code HOME, HOME, for 15% off your first order. All right. Here we go. Let's talk Hoosier headlines here, Coach. The first headline, Indiana will play in the Empire Classic. This has been kind of rumored, but it was confirmed this week. That is November 19th and 20th. It is going to be a 2-day, 2-game event. So it's UConn, defending champions, Texas, Louisville, and Indiana at Madison Square Garden. And unlike the NCAA tournament, you will probably be able to know that it's Madison Square Garden while Indiana is playing there. I don't think they'll have some crazy floor, so you don't even know where you're playing. But a pretty cool high-profile event for the Hoosiers to be in. You would guess that they'll probably put UConn and Texas, opposite each other since they're the two, they had the two best seasons coming into this. And then the winners will play each other in the second game. But a fun, high-profile event for Indiana to be in. Certainly good to go back to Mike Woodson's old stomping grounds in Madison Square Garden. And anytime you can play a basketball game at Madison Square Garden, it's a great experience for the players. Your thoughts on the Empire Classic as, kind of an anchor of Indiana's non-conference schedule?
Trying to figure out if my personal days, I'll have enough personal days to fly out to New York. I want to go see a game in Madison Square Garden. Love following the Hoosiers. That would be fun. I think it's good for Indiana basketball to be in these kinds of events, to get back to some of the Maui Classics or maybe going down to, some other non-exempt tournament. And I also think it gives room. I know there's a question later about, how do you replace the Big 10 ACC challenge? Just keep scheduling games like Kansas and Arizona, even if it's not a back-to-back tournament type thing. But I think you need to schedule 4 or 5 really tough opponents. We were real close to that last year. And if not real top-level talent, go to some mid-range games and having them come into Bloomington or something to create some interest. But this is nothing but a positive to go play in New York. You always want to go places to help your recruiting too. There's so many good basketball players out east, and if you can drag a couple into Bloomington, that's a good thing. But for alums and everything, it was so fun traveling to Vegas and going to the hotel and seeing the players come out and seeing the fan base. It's just an exciting time. Those people who went to Kansas probably feel the same way. Again, if you went to the NCAA tournament, those are some fun experiences, and Indiana is a blue blood, and we need to get back to our winning ways and our ways of traveling around and going to tournaments like this. We should have been in that one that Ohio State is in with North Carolina and UCLA. We were late getting out of the Classic, or the timing. It's just good to play marquee games. We need to win some. We didn't win them this year, but we will. So I'm looking forward to that quite a bit. And I think that's Thanksgiving weekend, right? Sunday and Monday, if I'm not either Sunday or Monday and Tuesday of Thanksgiving week.
I think it may be. That would make sense.
So that's right when all, the Maui Classic and all of that stuff probably is going on as well. So that's really fun time for basketball.
Yeah, it is. And, we'll talk a lot more about the non-conference schedule as we go through the offseason. But obviously with the Big Ten ACC Challenge going away, it's nice to have this on the schedule. Indiana will still have the series with Kansas, so we know that's going to be happening. And we will see what else they decide to do. And some of that, I'm sure, is going to depend on what the roster looks like. You got to see what kind of team you have before you know how much you want to challenge yourself in the non-conference. And so we will track that. Coach, also just an update on Xavier Johnson, because I know everybody wants to know. It sounds like a decision is still probably a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks away. We're just going to have to wait on that. I still haven't heard anything that makes me less than really optimistic that it's going to happen. It sounds like it's probable, but of course, we're all going to be a little nervous until we, get that final word. And I will say, Hoosier Hysterics had X on for an interview this week, and I thought it was really interesting. Just some interesting nuggets. He talked about how he and Trace did not practice leading up to the Xavier game, and then the two of them obviously played great. And I think the more that you hear about how this season went on, the more it really starts to come into focus how much Trace was struggling with the back through the early part of the season, when his numbers weren't quite as good, and obviously, all the injuries that, that Indiana dealt with. But it really, it makes what Trace ended up doing this season just, all the more impressive. And I also thought it was interesting that, X gave Coach Ya a lot of credit for improving his shot. Basically said, anytime he would call him and want to work out, Coach Ya would be there. They just kind of tweaked a few things, but a lot of it was just kind of the mental part of it. And really gave him a lot of credit for doing that. So just a really interesting interview there with X. Always good to hear from the players. And I'll tell you, if you listen to that interview, you really hear a guy that is taking ownership of the team. I mean, he really kind of talks like it's his team. He's ready to lead. And that's exactly what you want to hear, obviously from a guy who's going to be a super senior. He's been around for a while. He's going to be, potentially 5, 6, 7 years older than some of the freshmen who were coming in. And I liked hearing certain things from him, like how ticked off he is that they haven't beaten Northwestern yet. And he obviously hasn't had a chance to play in any of those games, in part his own fault for one of them, but then obviously injuries caught up on the other one. But I think it's a good window into, the guy that we're all expecting to really be the anchor of the team next year. As much as we want Malik to step up and get some good transfers in here and all that stuff, X is going to have the ball in his hands. He's the one who's kind of been in the system the most, along with Trey Galloway, and kind of had the most playing time. He's such an important piece for Indiana this season. So I thought that was a really good window into just his mindset as he kind of goes in this offseason.
Is there any idea about the timing of this, the procedure, or is it just up in the air? The NCAA has all the information. They got to meet and make a decision, or
as far as I know,
are we aware of anything like that?
As far as I know, yeah, everything's been submitted, and they're just waiting to hear. I think it may go to the Big Ten first, and then it would go to the NCAA for appeal. I think someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that. Jay's in the chat, and I know he's studied this a lot, so he may be able to let us know. But it sounds like everything is progressing well there, which is good. Other headlines, Coach. Just a few bits of information about the guys who are transferring out of Indiana. Jordan Geronimo, we haven't heard anything about. I did see a couple tweets that it looks like Missouri and Kansas State have emerged as the leaders for Tamar Bates. Both of those make a ton of sense. Obviously, they're closer to home. And both places figure, to have some needs on the perimeter next season. So we'll see where he ultimately ends up. And Logan Duncombe heading to Xavier, which is what a lot of people thought. So he was recruited by one Miller brother, and now he will play for another Miller brother, and we will see how he does. Obviously, we wish all those guys well, and so we will track their progress in their new places. And then the Big Ten news, Coach, some really big news this week. Hunter Dickinson entered the portal, clearly shot to the top of the available players list with what he has done over 3 years. Michigan's, if you think Indiana has holes on its roster, Michigan lost Hunter Dickinson. They lost Kobe Buffkin. They're losing Jet Howard. I've heard talk that they may lose Terrence Williams and some other guys too. So they are really going to be scrambling to fill a competitive roster. Ohio State got a commitment from Jamison Battle, who played for Minnesota. That's a guy we had talked about as potentially being an IU target. He is off the board now. Brandon Newman transferred away from Purdue. Be interesting to see where he goes. I've heard people talk about him maybe going to Valpo, so maybe stepping down a level to get a guaranteed role in his last go-around. And then for Illinois, Jaden Epps, RJ Melendez, they both transferred out. So Illinois also looking to fill a lot of spots. What of those Big Ten headlines kind of jumped out to you?
Well, the Hunter Dickinson one, I think that just smacks of NIL recruiting to me without much knowledge. So someone got a hold of him and said, that. I think Newman's going to end up with Shrewsbury. They were very close when Shrewsbury and Newman were together at Purdue. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him go there and help Shrewsbury transfer into his first year because he knows what he's doing. So that's where I think Newman's going. But, yeah, the Hunter Dickinson one surprised me quite a bit. Again, what's going on at Michigan? I know they've been real close to having good years. Made it in to Sweet 16 as an 11 or 12 seed 2 years ago, and then really lost some tough games down the stretch, or they would have been in again this year. But I'm not sure that's where everyone in Michigan wants everyone to be, or or at. So that was a shock to me. As far as the young men who are leaving our program, I wish them nothing but the best of luck. Going forward, I want to see them be successful, and I think Xavier's had some success taking transfer big men from Nunji from Iowa and turned him in. I think that's a pretty smart move for Logan, that if they can go and develop and play in his hometown, I think that's pretty good. Tamar getting closer to home would be a good situation for him, and we know Geronimo is going to end up somewhere where he can have a chance to play. But I think it's important to appreciate those guys for coming. It didn't work out or wasn't going to work out going forward, but we do want those guys, at least I do, want those guys to find a place and then have some success, just like El Durham did at Providence. That was fun to see for El, even though we wished that he had been there. Armand Franklin, the same thing. Would have loved to have those guys stay put, but man, glad they were able to contribute at their new places going forward.
Yeah, good call on Newman to Notre Dame. That does seem like it would be a good fit for him. And Dickinson is going to be interesting. It certainly doesn't seem like Indiana is in the mix there at all. I've heard Kentucky for him. Probably someplace where he can get a nice big NIL bag while he still has some college eligibility left, because certainly is a guy who projects to be more of a college player than an NBA type player.
It seems there's no tampering in NCAA college, right? Like you can just call up someone and say, "Hey, I'm going to have this much NIL at the end of the year. Come see me." It's not even free agency. It's not even like you declare you're free agent and then you go. It's just open season. Handshake line. Hey, see, you didn't play a whole lot tonight. Give us a call.
Come hang. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Jamison Battle coming off the board. I know he's a guy that you were relatively high on when we talked, and he certainly would have filled a need as a shot maker and scorer.
Right. But the thing is, as an old man sitting in his basement looking at highlight films, he made shots. But Coach Woodson and staff had an interview with him, and he had an interview with us, and maybe decided that Ohio State was a better fit for him, probably because Indiana's been going after some fives, and it seems to me they want to make Malik that 4, which I'm okay with. If Malik can shoot and do some things on the perimeter, we know Malik can pass. So if you get a 5 that you want to start and then play Malik, and maybe the minutes weren't there that he could get at Ohio State. That's the thing I'm trying to understand too with the portal is it's nice when you hear these guys are interested. You get that tweet. These 15 schools are interested in Caleb Love or Jamison Battle, and Indiana's on there. You get excited because you see how they could fit. But we're not in the mud trying to figure this out. And sometimes when you kick the tires of a new car, you don't like it. And maybe you appreciate it. It's a nice car, but it's not the car you want in your driveway. And Coach Woodson and staff are doing that. That's where the patience has to come from. But I liked his ability to shoot. I just think, that is so important. And maybe I'm just beat up for so many years, Jared, of not being able to shoot the ball. And we saw how important it was in the NCAA tournament when you got to the Sweet 16 and further. Teams that could shoot. Teams also had centers that could post and protect the rim. So it's not just small ball, but that ability on the perimeter is important. And I'm sure I know Woodson and staff know that as well. That's where some of these guys we'll talk about in the second segment. They're looking hard for those guys as well. So, Holtman does a good job over there at Ohio State. Doesn't surprise me. I feel sorry for him that we'll beat him once or twice once the schedule comes out. And he had a chance to put on the candy stripes, and he decided to get his ass beat. So that's okay.
I love bitter coach. It's awesome. All right. Coming up on Assembly Call Radio, it is time to zoom in on Indiana's transfer portal activities. It has been a busy week. It's busy right now. Things are happening. We will get you up to speed on some of these names, what they bring to the table. Matt Cox will be joining us here soon. Stick with us on the Assembly Call. My favorite part about the chat mob is how Megan and Libby just come in here and they just start talking back and forth. Like, Megan, I'll call you in a bit. I have a pseudo answer. Have to figure out the logistics. So they come into our basketball chat and they're talking taxes, which is good.
Yeah,
I need to talk with Megan about our taxes.
So I invited myself into their family breakfast last Sunday, and I beat everyone to the cozy table. And the guy at front says, "Oh yeah, go back there in the corner." I go back there in the corner, and it was like your Secret Service, the FBI, whoop, just swarmed in on my son and I. You can't sit there. All the waitresses and support staff didn't know that the guy gave us permission. Like they own that place on Sunday morning at 9:30. But they were very nice and treated my son and I to breakfast and just good family talk with Megan and Libby. But it's always fun
one of the highlights
part
of
of their
trip up
families.
there.
Yeah.
All right, so help me interpret this, Coach. Megan sends a message. You're on my list, Jared, with an exclamation point. Now, that could be taken
Taxes.
like, hey, I'm on the list to get it done. All's well.
Yes.
Or this could be another kind of list that I'm on. A shit list. Where I'm getting called out here because I haven't gotten to everything yet. So I'm not quite sure. I did send Megan some whiskey. She put out a tweet that said send whiskey, so I sent whiskey just to try to butter her up and not be mad at me for the delay. But it's all good. Okay, good. Whew. All right, we are good. We are good. All right, so we will. We're gonna wait here for just a minute until Matt gets here. But there's some.
The interesting thing, Jared, with this portal is you do wonder sometimes these guys enter the portal and then how soon do they go? Like the Nebhart guy from Creighton, is he going to quickly be at Arizona because of that connection that the head coach at Arizona recruited his brother to Gonzaga? It's interesting. It'd be interesting to know what goes on behind the scenes, and who the secret texters and phone calls and people finding out the information if someone would be interested to move, because some of these names pop up are interesting. Mm-hmm. And then you just don't know. That's okay. You just don't know either. Some of these guys from some of the smaller schools, like the Connect guy that we're going to talk about,
Dalton,
pop up and then all of a sudden, those kind of guys can fit in, and most of the fan base just knows the top guys. We want the Loves and the Dickinsons and all of those because we know them. But there's a lot of unknown quality that is in the transfer portal.
Absolutely. Okay, hold on just 1 second here. Okay, let's bring Matt in. There he is. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Matt Cox. How you doing, buddy?
Reporting for duty. Fellas, how are we?
We are good.
Doing well.
Hey, talk again real quick. We haven't started segment 2 yet. Let's talk again real quick.
1 2 testing. 1 2 1 2.
Is your mic on?
It is on.
Is it? All right. It sounded like it might be picking it up from your computer, but I can't. When I have AirPods in, I can't always really tell.
1 2 1 2 testing. 1 2 1 2.
Okay. Does it sound good to you, Coach?
Yeah, sounds fine.
Okay. Then we're probably good. All right, sweet. Well, let's hop into this here and let's talk about these dudes, which will be fun. Okay, here we go.
Hey, it's Romeo Langford. What's the only thing better than hitting a game winner to beat Wisconsin? Celebrate it with friends afterwards. Join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on assembly call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Alrighty, thank you, Romeo. You are listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest here with us again. One of our favorite recurring special guests is Matt Cox, co-host of the Three-Man Weave, college basketball betting savant, and many other things. We're happy to have maybe not so much a savant.
Yeah, temporary loser, but long-term winner, Jared. So
that's good.
Yeah.
That's
Big
good.
picture.
By the people are already calling you out for the Duke pennant in the background, but you're
As
probably
they should.
used to that when you
As
come
they
on the
should.
show. Is that also an FAU one in the background too?
New addition. I had a Hawaii and Valley State on the left here, so I had to make a temporary insertion for our Owls, the team of the people, America's team. Coach Thompson.
Very nice. That's right. So, hey, I mean, you guys obviously at Three Man Weave, I mean, you cover basketball from every angle. I'm sure March is just a crazy busy time for you. Do you follow the John Rothstein philosophy of not sleeping until May, or have you gotten a couple nights of sleep since the championship game, even though the transfer portal certainly hasn't stopped?
I got a few nights after I got back from Houston. Shame on me. I just want to hold myself accountable. I did actually depart the Final Four before the championship game, but I don't regret that because that just had no intrigue to me. I think everyone expected what happened to happen. So, yes, I have recovered, fully recuperated. My beloved colleague Jim Reard already has our secret master sheet, portal tracker, roster manager, master workbook already off and running. So he already has his projected starting lineups for all 14 Big Ten teams. We can go through all 14 if you want to tonight on tonight's program. But no, I'm ready.
Yeah, what's the Michigan projected starting lineup right now?
A lot of blanks. We have some unclear colored highlights here. Can't quite discern what those mean. I mean, actually, I don't know. I mean, everyone's team's really much up in the air right now. That's why it's so foolish to even have it. But with the portal, the portal prognosis, it's always fun. So
it is. It is. Well, hey, make sure that you all are subscribing to Three Man Weave. They'll have great coverage throughout the offseason. One of the best college basketball podcasts out there. But speaking of the portal, we can joke about other schools, but the truth is Indiana's starting lineup right now is one guy waiting on a waiver, a sophomore in Malik Renew, and then three very open slots that we don't know who's going to fill them. And so we want to spend some time tonight going over some of the names that we've heard. These are guys we've talked about in some form or fashion on the show before, outside of one of them who was new that came up this week. But we want to get your thoughts, because obviously you guys view college basketball from a national perspective. And so let's start with the two guys who are on official visits right now. One of those guys is Chris Ledlum from Harvard. The Athletic had him ranked as the number 55 transfer portal prospect. 24/7 had him ranked number 45. We've talked about him before, a guy who's a 6'6", thickly built, at least at Harvard, was really able to drive and get to the basket. His three-point shooting, I think, was about 29%. Tony Adranya had a great note that overall it was 29%, but on catch and shoot, it was 34%. And so if you eliminate maybe some of the, threes that he has to create for himself, maybe that percentage goes up. But a guy who projects to be able to do some of the things that Race Thompson did in terms of being a disruptive defender, getting rebounds, some of that stuff. So give me your thoughts on Ledlum and, specifically how you think his game would translate to the Big Ten.
You could argue there are concerns with how he steps up in class. He's kind of on the surface, he looks like a tweener, 6'6", but he is burly. And the game against Kansas last year, I think where a lot of people, if you're watching that, it was sort of, I think it was a nationally televised game. Harvard kind of competed with KU. I mean, Ledlum was great in that game. Looked in no way incapable of playing against a top-tier team at their building. Now, KU wasn't exactly flush with size last season, so it wasn't like he was going against the Doak KU front line. But still, I think you see the upside there. You see how it could translate. Does a lot of different things. I like how you said it, Jared, on Twitter, just the ultimate glue guy. He really can play a number of different roles. So he's a guy where I like if you're getting him this part in the portal cycle right early, you're not quite sure how the roster shakes out. I think he gives you some optionality where you can play him with different types of lineups in different types of schemes at different spots, that in a nutshell is why I think he's a great get. Now do I believe he's a great shooter? No. And I worry that he might be another floor cramper. We've had issues at IU with multiple years. Do we have enough guys who can space the floor, especially at that 4 position? The stroke looks good. I'm not a shot doctor. I don't fancy myself as being able to project how someone's shot can translate, but he does have kind of that smooth fluidity, passes the eye test with all that stuff. So I just like him. Again, what is he going to be in the Big Ten? I'm not sure. I think he can step up in class. I think he can play a number of different spots for you. So he's an asset to go after at this point.
And he's interesting because, his names come out. It's like, Khalil Ware and Caden Shedrick. These are guys that can protect the rim and they're lob threats and they're big guys. And then, you look at, Nick Timberlake and Dalton Connect. And these are all guys that we're going to talk about here. And they're kind of flashy. And so, as those names have come up, I'd forgotten, not that I'd forgotten about Ledlum, but it's easy for him to fall under the radar. And when I watched those film clips again that Tony posted, it was a reminder of, you got to have someone to shoot. You got to have someone to catch lobs and block shots. You also need someone to do the dirty work. And I know Race Thompson struggled last year, going through injuries, but think back to how much he meant to Indiana the season before when he was healthy and you had someone doing all that. So if you can get someone who's like that, but also has a mid-range shot and can threaten a defense in more ways than Race did, there's a real chance for him to be a valuable guy. So I agree. If you can lock him down early, it kind of allows you to build around him and all the things he can do.
And his the advanced defensive metrics really like him, like his block rate, his steal rate, stuff like that, which sometimes people put too much stock in that, but typically all the NBA stock and, they all tell you that kind of stuff really does translate, guys that can, make events, as they say, happen on the floor. So defensively, I feel really solid about, that fungibility translating to, which is great, right? We're not trying to, whatever we're trying to improve or round out the edges of what IU is the brand that Wooden's trying to play. You don't want to abandon the foundation that's got you such strong success so quickly, right? That's defense, that interior physicality, rebounding, and I think Ledlum checks all those boxes. So yeah, again, kind of a high floor get in my opinion.
Yeah.
I know we're in a world of positionless basketball, but is he strictly a 4? Can he play the 3? Can he guard the 3? Or is his game going to be that 6'6" power forward spot only if he comes to IU?
I think he's a 3-4. 2 is more of a stretch, and 5 is a stretch in the Big Ten. Probably better suited at the 4. I think he can defend up better than he can defend down. But against Big Ten competition, I think he'll be defending up actually more just with the way most of the Big Ten rosters are constructed. I don't have issues with him being kind of caught in that tweener middle, which is sometimes the concern with guys transferring up that sort of have that type of DNA to them. But I think he's a 3 and 4 both, slight lean toward 4, but no issues, no real concerns playing the 3. A little bit maybe with shooting, but nothing glaring that's, he's not worth, he's worth ignoring over that.
All right, so let's talk about the next guy, and that is Kel'el Ware, who is currently on a visit, and I certainly think that this is one worth paying attention to for Indiana fans. It's happened fast, but I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about it. And I think, he's an interesting one. This is a guy that was a McDonald's All-American, just very highly rated coming out of high school, has all the tools that you want. For IU fans who followed the Xavier Booker recruitment, he's a guy somewhat in that mold in terms of size and versatility. He's able to go down on the block more than Xavier, seems like maybe a better rebounder, but had some questions this year about his motor. Dana Altman called him out for not playing hard a couple of times in what seemed like a very strange season at Oregon. But The Athletic has him rated number 19 on their list. 24/7 has him rated number 2. And he's a guy who has NBA lottery potential because of his size and ability to step out and shoot, ability to block shots. He's the kind of versatile big man that Indiana wants because he doesn't need post touches, to be productive. So give us your thoughts on Kel'el Ware, and maybe if you can contextualize a little bit, his freshman season, because obviously some people are going to look at that and be like, whoa, what's the story here?
Right. I think the context is huge there. He was recruited by Crutchfield, who now is at Omaha. And previously, before getting that job, he was at Oregon. I don't know if you guys went through this whole backstory, but I think there's a misalignment. Okay, so head coach at Omaha last year, first year, Chris Crutchfield, was at Oregon recruiting Ware coming out of high school. He's from North Little Rock, I believe. So, kind of a Midwest type guy. Also, alarm bells ringing when you hear Little Rock, Arkansas, and just the black curtain they wield over, it seems like Midwest basketball with their ability to get guys. But anyway, Ware comes out of Little Rock, goes to Oregon. Crutchfield then goes to Omaha, and then Ware stays committed to Oregon and, reinforces that he's still committed to going there despite the guy that really brought him there is now left. And that kind of laid the foundation for was just a really rocky relationship with Dana Altman, who, I'm not going to – I'll assign blame to both parties, right? There's a lot of video evidence of Ware's defensive attention and energy lapsing severely. So I don't want to put all that on the fissures that developed between him and Altman, but also it was never really a place he wanted to be. And I think he just felt really far away from home without a guy who kind of ushered him in there. I think that kind of laid, like I said, that sort of snowballed into was a really inconsistent season. However, even as badly as it was reviewed by, the NBA scouts, I saw Jonathan giving him a terrible review. He still had some monster games against some top flight competition the eye test, I mean, my goodness. I mean, the couple of like high pick and roll slips, he just jumps, one drop step, hammer time. The most bouncy pogo stick type of big that IU is going to have in a while if we do secure him. I think you bet on the upside, and you basically hope that the risk concerns were rooted in the situation last year and not in like true innate character stuff. And I think his upside's worth that risk, right? Look at a guy like Bryce Hopkins for Providence last year. And it's not a similar situation, but big time talent gets kind of overshadowed. I think gets a change of scenery, right? Blank slate. And look, he just absolutely shines under like a coach, Ed Cooley, Mike Woodson. You see some obvious similarities there. So I kind of like how this narrative plays out. If we do get him and play him in the right spots, he'll be closer to home, back in the Midwest too. So I'm kind of excited about the whole Ware thing if this plays out.
Yeah, and he seems like he would pair really well with Xavier Johnson, because if you want to get the most out of X, you need a good lob threat for him.
Exactly, no question.
Give him someone to lob it to.
But also in some of the highlights, and you always see the good when you see these highlights come out, right? It's everyone's an all-star in their portal film, but he also has some ability to pick and pop too, which I think a lot of Indiana fans are wanting a little. We still want to go to the 5. We still want lob threats. We still want that presence, but we don't want to have that so much dependence on the straight post-up game. But he can pick and pop. And in this day and age, having 4s and 5s who can shoot, and they just have to shoot about 32% to stretch the floor. Do you think that he can do that consistently with more minutes than he got at Oregon?
Yeah, he's got a nice stroke. He shot I think he was sub 30% from 3. It was a low volume, but you're right that you see the film. I think you can train, you can extend that range, and not that he's going to be TJD, certainly not going to make that comparison, but he's a guy that I think can make pick and pop jumpers, even from the mid range, more willingly, more assertively, more consistently in TJD, which probably opens up the belly of the defense for the rest of the offense. That could be a benefit, right? A blessing in disguise, especially if you want to play 2 bigs, which, I don't think that's what Woodson ultimately wants to do, but with the way the roster is shaping up, kind of similar to the point you made about Ledlum at this point in the cycle, you don't quite know how the roster is going to shake up, who else you might bring in. I think Ware as well gives you a little bit of flexibility with, a guy that can play kind of that bruising big inside, that rim protector, but can also step away and give you some spacing inside out. If that jump shot develops, I always hate to project the guy who makes threes in the clips and the highlights and the practice, but it does seem to look like it's a very encouraging jumper at least.
Yeah, he shot like 27% from 3, I think, on 55 attempts, which is a good number of attempts for a freshman. And so I think for a freshman to come in, and shoot that well, he looks comcomfortable. And so just that threat, to your point,
I'm not sure Altman was always comfortable with those shots, but I can tell he's got that. At least he's wired that way. So,
but if you're going to play Malik Renew, and obviously, I mean, he's going to be one of Indiana's most talented players, and certainly the hope is that Malik can step out and shoot and not just be anchored to the block. But he's so good on the block. I mean, he was so good as a freshman, and he, projects to really get better. You need a big like that to pair with him. Otherwise, it's, we love Race, we love Trace, but having those 2 guys on offense, we know what the limitations are. And these guys would certainly bring a different flavor there if you compare them together.
And I think if you're I was texting with my buddies and we're like, man, I feel like this roster is going really archaic back to the Stone Age where it's like super heavy big, but look at the bright side on that. If you put Ware and Renew and even Sparks with his ability to kind of, slide his feet, I think there's a real chance for this front line to be as good as last year's defensively. And again, that's a great point to start from. Now you just got to figure out the rest of the perimeter, which has a lot of work to do. But like I said, don't abandon that foundational success, which is what put IU to the 5 seed line, right? Basically, French 4 seed, terrible matchup, and around a 30. But it is what it is, right? So I don't abandon that. I don't think too many coaches and rosters try and go the other direction of what they were the year before, and they kind of lose touch with the foundational pieces they have in place and maybe what brought them success year prior. So I kind of like where Woodson's, whether it's by, intent or by, happenstance, I like where he's focusing right now.
Do they, the combination of these 2 guys, Ledlum and Ware, rebounding was an issue down the stretch for Indiana.
Yeah, it was.
Do you see both of these 2 guys adding to that, or is it still going to we need some dudes at the 2 and 3 to have more guard rebounding, which was a big thing for me as well. Can these guys rebound at this level? Where probably yes, I would imagine coming from Oregon and that level of recruit, Ledlum. Can he rebound at that 4?
Yeah, I think he can. He has that physicality, right? That side. I'm envisioning like a Renew and Ware pairing is like I call the Evan Batty, the Batty and Braun. Who's the bigs at Colorado 2 years ago? I call them Bunnies and Braun, right? One's got kind of the hops, the springboard. One's got more of the physicality, the brute strength. I kind of like that yin and yang, and yeah, I think they can both rebound. The undersized concerns with Ledlum, I think, are undersized. He's got long arms, he's got a big frame, so I think he'll be okay there.
So, you can kind of look at this segment like a hot board. People put their hot boards together. Who are the top targets? Who are the most likely guys? So, we've talked a lot about Ledlum. We've talked a lot about Kel'el Ware here. I think for a reason, both of them are on official visits. And as we've talked about with the transfer portal, I pay almost no attention to the initial tweets that someone reached out. Pay a little bit of attention if someone gets on a Zoom, and then start paying a lot of attention if there's an official visit. All right, a lot of attention. And I think these both warrant a decent amount of attention, here over the next 24 hours or so. So with that said, so you talk about Ware, and then obviously Indiana has some backup plans there in terms of Caden Shedrick, Mike Hand-Logden. I don't know exactly how to pronounce his last name, from Marshall.
Huge fan of him. I don't think he's coming here, but huge fan of him. I wish we would have put the beat on him earlier. I'm not sure we ever had a chance there, but he's my favorite of the big bunch, by the way.
Is he really? Even more than Shedrick and Ware?
Shedrick, you know what you're getting, but I like the upside. I call him Handy. He's just a complete comet with the talent he has, the skill he has, and he put on a ton of muscle in the offseason. He's going to be a star. I really think there's something special with him. So
his dad was an NBA player too, so I mean he's kind of got the background,
pedigree, yeah, for sure.
So we'll see. It sounds like he's probably going to the SEC. All the articles I've read about him, he talks a lot about the SEC schools. So we'll see. I don't think there's.
I've heard Mizzou and Florida, the two that are kind of in the front seat there for him. So we'll see.
Yep. So, okay, so if we can think optimistically here and we say, okay, Indiana's able to lock down one of these, kind of versatile centers, you get a guy like Ledlum. Now it's very obvious what else you need, which is shooting and dynamic scoring from the perimeter, preferably athletic scoring from the perimeter. Yep. I think we all have high hopes for CJ Gunn. We're going to talk a lot about him in the offseason, but I still kind of view next season as a bit of a transition year for him, to where he was kind of out of the rotation this year. Ideally, I think you want CJ Gunn to be your 7th or 8th guy who comes in, kind of can make some shots, maybe can pop for 15 or 21 game, but if he has an off night, you're not necessarily counting on it, quite as much. And so you want another guy who's more experienced, who can step in. The two big names right now that would fill that role, that at least have some Indiana ties in terms of the recruiting, are Nick Timberlake and Dalton Connect. For a while there, it looked like Timberlake, was kind of the top target, but he went to North Carolina. I think he's on a visit now with Kansas. He set up one with UConn. Haven't heard a whole lot about Indiana with him over the last few days, so I don't really know where that stands. Dalton Connect, on the other hand, had a Zoom recently. And a lot of the chatter that you hear from different sources is that things are trending toward him getting on campus for an official visit, which would be nice. I think it's pretty clear that, those are the two guys. And by the way, as far as Caleb Love goes, I think that ship seems to have sailed. It looks like he's either going to Missouri or Michigan, so that's why we're not talking about him. But Indiana needs a guy like that who can go get buckets, can shoot, and even shoot in a more versatile way than Miller Kopp, because Miller Kopp was great, but he had a pretty tight window, of scenarios when he can actually get a shot off. And you want a guy who can maybe sprint off screens, who can attack a closeout a little bit better. These guys both project there. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on each of them. And if you know any more about Timberlake, is that one that we should still pay attention to? Because I don't really know on that one.
I've heard he is more of a long shot. Yeah, drifting away to other, other suitors with you. So I'm shorting my stock with him coming to Hoosier land, but I love him as a player, man. I think he's an upgrade in Miller Kopp, because he's right. He's a little more dynamic, more versatile, can kind of create a little bit off ball screens if needed, but just a more versatile scorer off the dribble, kind of shot fake and, got a little more wiggle to his game. And he's really tough. He come from Towson. They rebounded the crap out of the ball there. He defends. And he's got a little ish to his game. I'll say that too. I think he'd be a Hoosier favorite if he came here, but it seems like Connect is the more likely get. And I think I think you'll be enthralled with his offensive. People have already probably seen the highlights now, right? His offensive repertoire is pretty vast. I mean, he's got every shot in the bag. He can pass it. He can score from, mid range. He's got a long release from three. It's tough to block. He's got that good length. I think he's a more versatile, more fluid Miller Kopp. If we're going back to those Miller Kopp comparisons, I think both guys are actually very apt in that same type, that prototype. More offensive fluidity to him, but defensively, I certainly have my concerns. I watched that team 3 times this year. As a unit, they didn't defend anything. Now, I wasn't exactly fixed on Connect myself. Like I wasn't really watching his, individual defensive prowess. I'm of the camp that you can, quote unquote, hide him or, protect him defensively because he has good length. I think he has good instincts, and he'll have a much better supporting cast around him, right? Rim protection behind him, more fleet of foot defenders beside him. And I think Woodson can get the most out of him where, look what he did with Miller Kopp, right? Miller Kopp was a, whatever defender, and then it became like a plus defender, right? I don't know if we'll ever see Connect be a plus defender, but he can be serviceable to where his offensive upside it makes him an asset. So I told my buddies, I think he's a great, fifth starter, maybe, first, second guy off the bench. And I think he's a safer play than Gunn, right? I'm not sure if I want to start both those guys, but I like your framing of that in terms of he's a more ready type of Gunn, to step in right away with some veteran presence, knows how to play. Love that he was coached too under Steve Smiley. He's like a very big data analytic guru, threes, rims. I think he gets it a little bit. So I kind of like that he comes from that modern type of basketball culture there. So yeah, he's a fun guy to watch too. Definitely a guy that, looks good on the highlight reel.
Well, hopefully we don't beat those lessons out of him.
Please sustain.
Hopefully we continue those. I will say, just think back defensively. Think back 2 years ago, how bad Parker Stewart and Miller Kopp were defensively early in the season, and then the way they played defense at the end of the season. And the difference was night and day. And so I understand the concerns defensively with some of these guys on the perimeter. Just based on what I've seen from 2 years under Mike Woodson and the trends in college basketball, recruit offense on the perimeter, right. Especially if you can put him next to a guy like Xavier Johnson. Like, to run Mike Woodson's defense, you do need at least one guy who can pressure the ball and keep guys in front of him. And so X can be that guy. But you've got to prioritize offense and shot making with that other position. And if you have to give up a little bit defensively, figure that out. But
that's the one position
too.
Like yeah, his position's the one defensively that I call it the least important, right? If you just go, I think point of attack, you got to be really good on the ball. You got to be able to have a guy that can stop the dynamic scorers and creators that can take over games. You got to be especially good at the rim. And then the third more important is kind of that wing floater type of piece. And you're right. My buddy made the same points. Like, you can't teach offense. You can extrapolate, most of defense, extract most potential. And think of like Texas Tech, Mark Adams brought in some low major guys and they turned into defensive stalwarts. So there's more examples just outside of even Woodson here at IU that gives you, I think, more confidence that these guys stepping up, even though they may have came from terrible defensive teams, doesn't mean they're not capable of guarding. They just may not have been as interested because they weren't playing on good teams, winning teams, to be honest. Or they just weren't taught and weren't bred in that type of defensive first culture that Woodson clearly has going here.
You can fit guys into a defensive system a lot easier than you can fit guys without offense into an offensive system because of the skill. The heart and the mindset to guard. You could go from bad to average real quick.
Intelligence.
Right,
having a brain is everything.
Right?
Yeah, it really is. Yep.
All right. So the other name here, and again, there's some other names that have been talked about, like Kawasi Reeves from Florida. We mentioned your boy Handy from Marshall. Shedrick, as you said, we kind of know what we're getting from him. Have you, I guess, give me your quick thoughts on Shedrick. Because to me, again, I want to get, one of those big versatile centers, and I've kind of looked at him as as a solid piece. But he's kind of been around and we've seen him play. And it is curious that he didn't play more for Virginia this year. Is that?
Yep. It's weird.
yeah, what's the story there? Is that something that should be a concern, or is it just a
No.
guy who needs a new spot?
I think so. This is very simply Virginia's offense was maybe it is a concern how that I think about it. Slight concern at most. Virginia's offense was really in a rut, and Bennett he was tinkering with some rotations. He found some offensive success going with a smaller lineup, basically taking Shedrick off and working in more shooting, more spacing on offense. And it helped the offense, but they didn't play any better at all. But defensively, they really struggled. And they started to get him back into the lineup late. And Virginia played a little better late. Now they kind of have the late season, obviously the Furman thing is well documented. But I never understood it. I thought Bennett was wrong to take him out of the lineup. I think he's a phenomenal rim protector, great defensive presence. He's a guy that's as safe as it gets. You're getting a guy that can anchor a defense, a top 20 defense, top 15 defense under the right scheme. Offensively, has some work to do, but I think he's a know your role type guy. He's not going to completely kill you in that end. I don't have any good intel on where the wind's blowing on his prognosis, but I think he's a really safe upside guy. I was trying to rank these guys earlier today. It's tough to rank them because they have kind of different offerings and, obviously different likelihoods they end up here, but I think he's up there.
Do you think it'd be fair to say he has a higher floor than Ware, but Ware
Yes.
clearly has the higher ceiling?
Yes.
Is that a good way to look at it?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. So the only other name really, that seems like one to take seriously is Jalen DeLoach from VCU, who I think scheduled an official visit. I know he Zoomed. I thought he scheduled an official visit. Said all the right things, man. Was referring to Bloomington as the Mecca of college basketball and all the stuff you want to hear from recruits. So if someone told him to say the right stuff, he certainly did. Your quick thoughts on him and how he's a different type of player than these other three centers that we've talked about. How do you think he would fit, especially with Peyton Sparks already in the fold?
Right. More of a glorified garbage man, but a really, really good garbage man in the Big Ten. He's a, junkyard dog, VCU bred type guy. Mike Rhodes recruits a very distinct type of player, and DeLoach fits that perfectly. I thought he anchored their defense brilliantly this season, or they top 15 defense. So this is not even a step up for him in terms of proving what he can be as a defensive anchor. I think he's a great backup get to Shedrick, put those two in the same mold, get one of those type guys like a pure defensive demon, and then Ware's more of a different, more all around, star potential type guy. But I love DeLoach, man. If you can't get Shedrick, I'd be calling him pretty quickly.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I think he's a great, again, upside limited, but high floor type guy.
Which is interesting, and this is kind of the topic that I want to get you out of here on. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, which is, I think it's really important for this season, especially with so much turnover. Like, how are you framing your expectations? And the way that we talked about it is thinking about Illinois last year, where they had a ton of spots to fill. By all accounts, knocked it out of the park in the transfer portal, getting Terrence Shannon, getting Matthew Meyer. They had a top recruiting class coming in. And then they kind of struggled through the season, get a 9 seed, 11-9 in the Big Ten. Like, it's fine. It's not a great season. So if you look at that from Indiana's perspective, Indiana's now made the NCAA tournament 2 years in a row. It kind of feels like a season where you just want to keep that momentum going. How do you look at it? Like, if you could lock in Illinois' season from last year right now for Indiana, wouldn't get worse, but you wouldn't have any upside to get better. Would you do it? And do you think that's kind of a fair way to frame Mike Woodson's third season, or should Indiana fans have higher expectations because of what the portal makes possible?
I think they should have higher expectations because of what the portal makes possible with the NIL muscle that we have. However, if you're setting like an over-under of next season's success and just kind of using that loosely as a barometer, that's a great line to set it at, right? I think that's a good most likely or median outcome, so to speak, right? 20-11, 11-9. 9 seeds, what Illinois, I think, entered the Big Ten tournament. Given where the roster is at now and how much we have to replace, we're replacing multiple cornerstones. It's a big ask. And I think that's if we kind of hit that this year and see strides from younger players, guy we can keep maybe, potential star for beyond, or a transfer that's going to, committed to maybe being here one more year, that's a win in my book. I think it's a step back next year, but it's a small step back with continued longer-term program momentum, if that makes any sense. That's sort of where I'm trying to put my head at. Is that where you guys are too?
Yeah.
That's almost exactly where I'm at. And I'm curious, you guys do so much, previewing heading into the season. I'm curious how that's changed for you now because rosters are so much in flux and it's so hard to tell. I mean, yeah, you can like look at it on paper, but now you've got all these personalities that are combustible and you've had recruitments that are 2 weeks long. Like, how do these players really know if they fit with the coaches and vice versa? How do you account for that when you're trying to project forward? Or you just throw your hands up in the air and, you know?
It's tough. I mean, I think you got to start by just like, all right, if this were like a simulated, video game team, what's it look like? And then you got to dig into what's the chemistry stuff look like, right? Did this team, they just get on campus a month before the season, right? Which a lot of teams, they have guys that just arrived at the very, mid end point of summer. Or was it like an FAU situation where they've all been in like full voluntary workouts for a month starting in May and June, which is what FAU is. I mean, so there's a wide variety of what you're doing in the offseason to make the pieces mesh together. And that's where that's the toughest part at this point. Like, I mean, like we can track the rosters. It's more, it's more furious at this pace wise at this point in the season, off season. But I think just understanding what the behind the scenes stuff looks like, which is like, this is where I think being a fan of a team is really fun now because you actually know way more about this stuff than like the, idiot generalist prognosticator like me knows. So that's what's really fun about it now. You actually have to get in and like see what's happening to really see, is it coming together or is it just still like, a pickup all-star team that we just formed this summer?
Yeah.
Matt, I'm interested in your thoughts on you nationally look at all these teams. Like Jerome Tang was able to put together a team and just turn that team around incredibly and have great success with the transfer portal and that. And we talked about Illinois. What are a couple things that you think are important for programs, coaches to do in order to be successful in the portal? And what do we look for from Woodson and staff that'll tell us whether this is going to – I mean, obviously the results, but what do you think is the difference between those programs that have been successful with the transfer portal versus those that have not? Is there a couple of things, or is it just the luck of the draw with the chemistry and the fit?
I do think it's unfortunately a lot of luck of the draw. Like, I mean, that K-State thing, with all due respect to the role players, I mean, Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson, I mean, they hit the absolute grand slam scenarios for both those guys, right? I mean, Keontae Johnson, most people weren't didn't want to take him because he wasn't going to play because that insurance policy with his health thing. Okay, he plays, and then he's an absolute all-conference beast like he was at Florida. And then Noel was, he was kind of an erratic head case at a Sunbelt program. He comes into K-State, Central World on fire. So, I mean, yeah, if you can hit grand slams and hit 00 green on the roulette table, then, I mean, that's obviously great. But I think generally the programs that have done it for a little bit longer and have had some institutional success behind it, I think are going to probably have a leg up for the next year or two until the rest of the, big name programs with the big money and the big time cachet get used to that acclimation process, right? I mean, a lot of coaches I talked to last summer were like, try to put a whole new team together. It just didn't work. I kind of learned the type of guys I want to find and, how I want to fit this together going forward. But I do think there's a 1 to 2 year learning curve. So I hope at the very worst case scenario, Woodson takes away something from how to do this new age recruiting. A lot of it virtually, a lot of it via the portal, very different from the old school, homegrown grassroots type stuff. Because it is changing fast. And I just was shocked to hear how many coaches, threw their hands up, retooling their roster last summer after failing to do it a good job the year before. So, yeah, it's a dicey, slippery slope out there.
Are there any other names that we didn't talk about that you're hearing or that you've kind of seen pop out there and you're like, man, I wish we would, jump on that guy. Maybe we'd have a realistic shot.
There's so many good dynamic guards out there. I keep sending my buddies are more plugged in than I am with the IU stuff. So I keep throwing names out there and I keep hearing other names back. Not that I'm discouraged by the names we talked about, but there's a lot of dynamic guards in the portal right now. A lot of them already kind of have, I think, leans as to where they wanted to go, either following a coach who got who took a different job or just, clear cut front runners that just, IU really hasn't been able to, wedge their way in there. I think 1 or 2, 3, 5 more hopefully pop. Get like an Estrada type guy or an A. Smith type guy, man. Like, let's just put all of our, back to the whole Tank comparison. That's the piece that we're missing. Now, I know we have X coming back next season, but, it doesn't hurt to have 2 of those guys. I think you can work around and fill in role players a lot easier than you can find that type of dynamism look what carried those teams to the Final Four Elite Eights, right? There's flaws all over those teams. But Miami just rode prolific guard play, right? San Diego State got enough prolific guard play when they needed to, along with the great defense. FAU, multiple guards can do multiple things. I just think you got to have guards. It's stupid. It's cliche. I hate saying it, but continuously and watching IU excessively the last few years, that is the missing piece. No question.
Like if you had a lottery pick freshman who played alongside your senior for a full season, what might they have been able to do together?
Yeah. Yep.
God, the what ifs of this season are just going to be
the one and done. I know. Can we do best of 3 the bracket going forward? That's my new. I'm trying to lobby for that. Like best of 3 against Syracuse in 2013. Maybe we solved the zone games 2 and 3. Just I don't know.
I think so. I think we would have gotten rid of all the mental hurdles from that first game. Although who knows? Maybe Crean would have kept him for an 8-hour practice just doing zone offense stuff, and it wouldn't have worked. You never really know.
I hate the tournament. I love it, but I hate it. And right now it's mostly a hate thing. So,
well, man, we always appreciate you coming on here. What is in store for you guys this offseason?
A whole lot of nothing related to college basketball for at least a month or two. Still track the portal and stuff, but we'll probably I assume we're going to launch our second annual edition of the Almanac with our Holy Grail preview stuff. And I probably start around July. So yeah, kind of a lull period, but then we get into it pretty heavily in July, and that kind of consumes us until the season starts, man. So yeah, hopefully I'm not sure who's getting the Big Ten this year. I'll try and lobby for that to give our conference its proper due. So I think Goodman or Douster probably butchered it last season. So I apologize about that.
That is all good. Well, hopefully we see some better basketball from the Big Ten here moving forward, man. It was
brutal offseason. Just rinse, wash, repeat, though, isn't it, man? Tough. At least we're not Purdue.
I was texting. Exactly. I know. I was texting with someone the other day. I was like, I would never do this because I love Indiana, but I would kind of like to take a year off from just being so inundated in Big Ten basketball and just like experience another conference.
There's a lot more aesthetically pleasing basketball out there. I will say that. So if you ever get a chance to get out of the Big Ten cocoon, you'll find if you're into offense and like what FAU is doing this year, like that stuff's happening. It's out there. Just got to leave the Big Ten torture chamber sometimes.
We just don't see it that much. Well, Matt, thanks, man. Really appreciate you coming on short notice. Awesome insight, and we will look to talk with you again soon. And hopefully we get some good news soon here on some of these guys who are on their visits.
Yep, let's get that roster in tip-top shape, Mike. Always a pleasure, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.
Good night.
All righty. So that is going to do it for segment 2. We will be back here in a matter of moments for our mailbag. Got a lot of great questions. Coach and I will be here and knock some of those questions out, including a mediocre question from Jay. Stick around. All right. Good stuff. Matt, that was great. We appreciate it.
No, loved it. Any other inside intel? I've been trying to. I'm not sure my sources are, Shams caliber good, but I guess Graham was the other guy I was going to bring up too.
Oh,
but it sounds like we're not even. That's ship sailed. So
yeah, I think I heard Providence for him, and then maybe not Providence for him.
Okay,
so I don't know exactly. Yeah, what's going on?
And I heard, Nemhard recruited or dropped in today. He's another one of those like kind of awesome guards, but I think he's going to probably follow his.
If he wants to come be close to his brother. Yeah, his brother came to an IU game this year. He's up there with the Pacers.
That's why I think that's why my friend brought it up. Actually, I think he's going to go to Arizona though and follow Lloyd, who recruited his to Gonzaga.
And they lost Creasa, who went to West Virginia.
We didn't want him. Glad we didn't get him. We had a big Caleb Love argument with me and my buddies in my group chat. I was team don't get Love, even though Love is the type of player that we need. Yeah, so I know I'm talking out of both sides. I'm out there, but I think it's a blessing in disguise. I really do.
But you're
right.
What's the
it is a guy?
Why?
It is like, a guy
that's what we want, right? It's a guy
that's what we want, but we don't want that
maybe
other
beggars
stuff.
Can't be choosers. I can't be. We need that, but not that one. Yeah.
We need that skill set. But someone who
he shoots you out of
who will run the offense.
He's like I called him a rich man's Devontae Green. That was actually kind of I don't know if that was am I throwing shade at? Yeah, I don't know. So we don't need. I'm fine being picky and waiting for something better if it's out there.
It's not. That's probably a fair comparison. That's a name that came up a lot.
In the yeah.
streaky players. I think it's fair. They both seem like good guys that are probably a little bit misunderstood and probably need a different coach. Devontae, I think, certainly would have thrived under a different coach.
Yes, very much so. That was
the two that he
Doc,
had.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, he had 1 year of Crean and then the rest with Archie. And Caleb Love, who knows what Hubert Davis is doing down there, but certainly sounded from his dad's comments like he wants to be coached. So I don't know if that's an indictment of what he had before or what, but
yeah, I think Hubert got lightning in the bottle, and that was I think UNC fans, and also I would say this, Texas fans with Rodney Terry, I think they're gonna the short-lived success will actually hurt them long term, because I think they kind of saw there's a little bit of fool's gold there. So we'll see.
We'll see. I think a lot about the Mike Davis example when I see that happen. When a coach kind of takes over a program that someone else has built. And I mean, I love Mike Davis, but he even admits he wasn't ready for the job at that time. And Terry actually has experience. What do you do if you're Texas, though? No,
you have to. They did everything right. It's just a tough spot. And I think actually Terry's gotten too much beef for being like, oh, he's a terrible. It's like, no, he's a fine coach. I think he's very good. He's in that, I think Texas can get almost whatever they want, and they probably would have preferred to have a blank slate, clean canvas type of approach to that hiring to start.
If the Texas job was open, he's not going to be one of their top 5 candidates
you're not
to
even
bring
in
in.
the consideration set
unless
you follow Beard,
so
which is, by the way, why I think assistants like, who is it, Patrick going to Arkansas, that's kind of smart. You kind of get your way into a top tier type staff, and you can sort of jockey your way into fast tracking into positional sunshine. So, hey, but the Mike Davis thing, ironic with the whole Dusty May ties. I'm not looking ahead to 5 years when Dusty May gets the call from Bloomington, but I might be looking ahead to 5 years when Dusty May gets the call.
It's natural. I mean, we all love Woody. It's not
I love
an
Woody
indictment
too.
of Woody, but I mean, he's got a short,
right,
most
exactly.
likely, although, who knows, with advancements in AI and longevity science, maybe Woody will coach forever. He certainly seems like a no stress guy. So
Dusty's guards moved and shot and attacked.
Wasn't it crazy? And they had like
Dusty.
7 of them.
They were so much
Wow.
fun.
All 9 of those dudes would start for us. I'm convinced. All 9 of those dudes would start for us.
Well, and I'll tell you,
role players, but they
that was beautiful to watch.
The thing that I thought watching those guys play is I could see CJ Gunn and Ja'Kai Newton playing on that team. Long guards, and
interchangeable sort of, right. Yeah.
Yeah, but
it's not like you're a point guard, you're a wing. The Big Ten just has very clear positional labels, right? You could line them up all, and you can 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where you throw FAU out there, and it's basically they had guards, 4 of them at one time, and they had 2 bigs. They just interchanged. It was just so fluid. So I mean, obviously, it's tough to get 6 guards who can do it at that level, and they got some really good players too. But if Dusty could do a little bit of that mojo here, I'd be fine with it. Again, we'll talk about it in 5 years when he comes.
Yeah, but they developed guys. That's the thing.
Yes, they did.
IU fans, that is one thing with IU fans.
He kept those guys for 2 multiple years. That's what's so impressive. All those dudes came back immediately last year. They're all coming back this year. I mean, that's insane. They went to the Final Four. They've had everyone calling them up, offer them 6 figures, and they're all just going to come back to FAU. It's crazy. So
it's awesome.
In what, a 2,400 seat arena too.
I went to it. It's an absolute joke. Goodman told us behind the scenes that Dusty said, "Hey, listen, I'll stay at FAU, but we got to do something about this." So I think they're pouring a bunch of money into the place and they're getting it fixed up. It's still
nice.
They're not going to pay what we would pay, or hell, whoever the hell he got offers from. I'm sure he got plenty of phone calls.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's the thing Indiana fans have forgotten. Players can develop.
They can. They get better.
We're always so used to we just got to bring in new guys. It's like, no, players can get better, but I think we're starting to see some of that under Woody. So hopefully that continues.
True. We are. I agree with that. Development's been much better under Woody. No question. Just got to keep him.
Well, that too. Yeah. That too. Well, Matt, thanks, man. We appreciate it. We will let you get out of here. And thanks, man, always for coming on.
No, you guys are the best, man. Take care of yourself. Seriously, appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, Coach. Let's roll through a few of these questions. Sorry if I've been a little bit distracted. I was fielding some messages. Not really at liberty to say what the messages are about, but I don't know. I might clear my calendar tomorrow just to make sure I have some availability. for things that could come up. All right, let's do this.
Hi, it's Thomas Bryant. What's the only thing better than being Kentucky in the NCAA tournament? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you, Thomas. I'm Jared Morris here with Coach Brian Tonsoni. Just had a great conversation with our buddy Matt Cox from Three Man Weave. Gave a lot of really, really good insight on the guys that Indiana is targeting in the transfer portal, just kind of overall, transfer portal philosophies, his expectations for Indiana. So really appreciate his time with us this evening. And now, Coach, it is time to go through the mailbag here. A lot of these questions submitted, actually this week, all the questions submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community. You can learn more about that at assemblycall.com/community. The doors are open. We'd still love to have you join us. It's going to be a fun off season. So come join us there. And Coach, let's begin with a little something special here.
It's not that good, but it's not that bad. It's Jay's mediocre question.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Jay is back, and he's got a question for us, Coach. The question is, the portal has established a new recruiting hierarchy where transfers are generally preferred over most high school recruits. Do you think that's a good thing or bad thing for college hoops as a whole moving forward?
Man, it depends on how you look at it, I think. But I think it's an overall, it's a good thing. Look at the tournament that we had. That was just topsy-turvy tournament. Teams are able to reload and rebuild because of that. Players are able to go where they would rather go. So for the young men, it's easier movement to get to a place where they feel better for whatever reason, more playing time or just a better fit. So ultimately, yes, I think it's good. I think, unfortunately, some of the high school guys that aren't at the very top of the recruiting rankings or in the AAU that used to be able to be recruited and then developed for a year or two or three, they have to go a different route now. They have to probably go a smaller route and then transfer into bigger schools. I think your Power 6 schools are still going to recruit the very top of the AAU circuit and bring those guys in, of course, top 100 probably. But ultimately, yes, I think it's better. I think you're going to see more parity. I think you're going to see some teams like FAU that when you have a coach wanting to build, get some guys in. And in our situation at Indiana, it would be a tough year if we had to just depend on the roster of the guys coming back and go get 5 or 6 freshmen and make the freshmen have to play that Big Ten schedule. We'd be waiting a year or two till they developed in order to be competitive again. I think this gives Indiana a chance to be competitive. So it's different, but I ultimately, even as an old man who likes things the way it was a while back, I think it's ultimately good.
All right, well, before we go on to these other questions, we do want to give a special shout-out. Our buddy Joel became a grandparent again today, Coach.
Congratulations,
he and
Joel.
his wife, Julie, grandparents, again, a new little Hoosier, brought into the world. Benjamin Edward, 8 pounds, 6 ounces. Congratulations, Joel. Hopefully you talked to him a little bit differently than you talked to some of us in the chat. But no, man, we're happy for you guys.
Still fix him the brisket.
Yeah, fix him some brisket. Maybe bounce him on your knee. Tell him stories about Al Durham and Christian Lander and all those guys. So no, we're very happy for you guys. That is always awesome news, man. There's nothing better than the birth of a new child or a grandchild. So that is very, very exciting. All right, let's go through a few of these other ones. From Troy, with the ending of the Big Ten ACC Challenge, what would you rather see take its place that week after Thanksgiving? A new conference challenge, like, against the Big 12 or an expanded Gavitt games, keep it open for other non-conference games, or shift the early conference games a few days forward? I mean, I think clearly you've got to prioritize high-profile games. Somehow, some way, get in the national conversation by playing someone good. Not only do you test yourself, but you keep yourself top of mind. There have been too many seasons recently where it just felt like Indiana's off over here doing its non-conference thing, and no one cares, and it never makes waves, in part because the team hasn't been good enough, and in part because the schedules have been bad. And that's the thing this year. Indiana was up and down, obviously dealing with injuries and inconsistency and all kinds of stuff early on, but there was still a lot of benefit from playing those games. You got the win against Xavier. You got, good experience against Arizona and Kansas, even if you didn't win. So I don't know exactly what shape that would take. If there's some kind of new challenge, great. If there's some kind of, recurring series with, a Kentucky or another high-profile team, awesome. But do something that puts you in the national spotlight. Because if you want to be a national program, that's what you have to do. And you have to be able to play and win those games. So to me, that's the option. And I'm not deep enough into the schedule stuff to know exactly what that would be. But something higher profile than the Crossroads Classic for sure.
Yeah, I'd say keep it open for high-profile non-conference games would be my number one choice. If we do, I kind of am intrigued by the mid-conference season, if you have a conference tournament thing with the Big 12 or like the SEC and the Big 12 do that sometime in late January, early February, just to go against some competition outside your league. I think that'd be awesome. That would be pretty cool because you're going to match up your top teams. In the offseason, your top teams versus your top teams. You get some heck of a good matchups. I mean, Kansas and Kentucky have played. That breaks up some of the conference season. I would like that, but you need high-profile games. If you have 11, I think 5 have to be high-profile of some sort, depending on whether you're in the non-exempt tournament or you schedule them like you did this year, or just have a home and away with, I was going to say UCLA, but that's not going to be non-conference much soon here anyway. But I think that Indiana needs to at least have 5 for profile and for bracketology purposes of building your resume. Those games against Kansas and Arizona, they didn't go our way. They weren't close, but they helped get Indiana a 4 seed with some losses above some other teams because their metrics and everything against those teams, it just matters. It matters. And for far too long, we haven't done that. I know a lot of fans would like to see that in Bloomington and get a nice game at Bloomington. That's sometimes hard to guarantee every year. But go play in New York. Go play in Vegas. Go play in Los Angeles. Do something like that to draw some interest against top quality.
Yep. All right, from Matt, I'm really curious when we think some of the pieces will start falling into place from the portal. Sparks committed quick, which seems like a great sign that he really wanted to be at IU. Should the fact that other guys have visited and are being visited by the staff but not committing be a concern to us? Or should we look at it as a positive that the players and staffs are taking their time and trying to ensure the right fit? Look, I think we all have to readjust our expectations for this time of year, because the reality is it's an interesting thing. It's kind of a dichotomy where it's like, okay, there's all these players out there and you want to get on them quickly because, as the good players start to go, there's fewer of them out there. But man, I mean, we're still kind of in the beginning stages of the transfer portal, season. There's going to be a lot more guys come out. I mean, just look at, the last few days, guys that have come out, Hunter Dickinson pops and Nemhard pops. And there's still many weeks for additional guys to pop. So we are still early in the process. That's part of the reason why, we've said let's have patience. And because of the recruiting work that the staff has done the last 2 seasons, there's reasons to be optimistic. Now, as we look at it right now, you're starting to see official visits, right? And so you're starting to see things heat up. I think obviously if you see a whole bunch of official visits come and then, the momentum seems to wane, maybe I would start to get concerned. But, we're just, Kalel Ware is on campus right now. Chris Ledham is on campus right now. Everything that you kind of heard about those guys heading into the visits was positive. Everything that you're hearing during the visit is positive. And so I think it's way too early yet to really be worrying about, oh my gosh, we haven't gotten another commitment. If we get into late April and May and we don't have any, okay, then maybe we'll change that a little bit. But I think there are lots of reasons to be optimistic, and I think there's lots of reasons to be optimistic about the guys who are on campus right now. So, I would say just continue to be patient, let this play out. And I know it's hard in the moment, but we just really have to let some of the dust settle and see what happens here. What I think you can look at, Coach, is, all right, who are we targeting? Who are we bringing in for, the coaches aren't going to bring guys in for visits that they're not serious about. It's a waste of time for everybody. They're not going to do it. And so you look at the guys that the staff seems to be prioritizing, and I think it tells you a little something about how they want to build the roster. Now, if you saw just, if they were, just looking to replace the guys they had last year and kind of setting up the same way, I would be a little bit concerned because it would suggest, hey, when these commitments do start coming, what do we actually have? But the way I look at it, some of these guys we're targeting will allow us to play in a different way. They're going to give this thing a different flavor. They fit well with the pieces that we already have. I'm encouraged about that. Now let's trust them to go do the work of closing some commitments and seeing what the roster actually looks like. But that's kind of where I'm at. I don't, when will some of the pieces start falling into place? I mean, again, you got 2 guys on campus for visits right now, and I guarantee you the staff's goal is to not have them leave without getting a commitment. These are shorter recruitments. You want to get that commitment assuming that the fit is there. So, I mean, you could start hearing news as soon as tomorrow if those go well, or it could take a little bit longer. So, but we are starting to enter that time now. The official visits are happening. You can start getting the news, but it's still not quite late enough yet to panic if you don't hear that news. How are you approaching it, Coach?
I think it's a positive. You want your coaching staff doing due diligence and looking at all the guys that come into portal. I'm pretty sure they're looking at guys that haven't even announced in the portal, like, what if these guys go? These are our type of guys. If there's not some texting, hey, have you ever thought about coming to Indiana for NIL money? If that's not happening, right? Now, for me saying that just feels not good, but that's the way it is. If a coaching staff is not doing all of that and just taking the first person who contacts you, that's not putting together a team in the way Mike Woodson wants them to be put together. So you have to have some patience with this. The nice thing is some of the guys who are interested in Indiana and the guys at Indiana are interested do tell us a little bit about how Mike Woodson might want to change how he's doing things and the fact that they're interested. If Indiana's off the list, that's when you start getting, all of a sudden these guys pop and, they're known names or they're good, talented, or they're ranked in the top 50 in the portal transfer. And they're not. None of these guys are listed in Indiana. That's when you have to get start your panic in, or the timing, like you said. A lot of the guys that are interested have had meetings and they've decided to go elsewhere. Then you might say, hey, what's going on? But it is just way too early to do that. And it's the same thing like with the Sparks commitment. Everyone was like, we got a post player. We need guards. Yes, we need guards. We got 4 spots left, and you still need 2 or 3 post players. I mean, all the teams that won had a couple of nice post players and a lot of guards, so there's still room for the guards to appear in this transfer portal. But it's positive. You got to do your due diligence. You can't just rush into this. Speed dating, it is, but there's a risk, so you got to kind of, speed date as smartly as you possibly can, and I think that's what's happening here.
And the other thing that's important to remember is just because there's conversations with a guy and it doesn't work out, it doesn't automatically mean that the player rejected us.
Right.
It very well could mean that a conversation happened and the coaching staff thought this isn't really a fit. And we're never really going to know that unless someone comes out and says it, or someone just has, an incredible source who was on that call or whatever. But for the most part, we're never going to know that stuff, right? Like with Caleb Love, there was all this chatter about it. What do we actually know about how that happened and how the conversations went? We don't really know a whole lot. So it's, we always want to kind of jump to conclusions, and either be defensive and say, well, we don't want that guy anyway, or get down in the dumps and be like, man, we got rejected again. But we don't know. And so I think one of the most important things we can do as a fan, which is also one of the hardest things because we face it all the time hosting this postgame show, is remembering all the stuff we don't know. And I think when you remember the stuff you don't know, it allows you to not worry about some of that stuff because we don't know and you can't control it anyway, so it's not worth worrying about. It would probably be a healthier experience for everybody if all college basketball fans just went away for a couple months and then came back when the dust settled to see what the rosters are. But that wouldn't be nearly as much fun. But while we're having fun tracking all this stuff, we do need to keep it kind of in the right perspective. And that's what I always try to come back to is if you feel yourself starting to get worked up about stuff, ask yourself that question. What do I really know about this? And it may not be a lot, and that helps you on the one hand. And the other hand is, look, let's say that, okay, Indiana does not get Timberlake and they don't get Connect, and we don't really hear about a lot of other irons in the fire for a perimeter scorer. I'd start to get a little bit concerned at that point. I wouldn't necessarily panic because there are other guys out there, but at that point I might start to get a little bit concerned. But right now we're still in that first cycle where, having the official visits, waiting for guys to make their decisions. So I think you've got time to be patient. By the way, we have like 315 people live on an off-season show. A few weeks.
And you just told them all to leave for 2
That's
months.
Awesome. No. That was hypothetical. Stay. Everyone else
okay.
can go. We'll still keep doing the show, though. We'll still keep doing the show. Just don't focus on recruiting. Okay. And let me say this. It, just kind of our philosophy on this stuff, because there are times that things happen and, we hear things and blah, blah, blah. I think, like if I heard that we were going to get a commitment, we would not break that news ever. We would leave that as, something that's news for a player to break. And so, that's never something that we would talk about on this show, but as soon as news like that breaks, you can be sure that we'll do everything that we can, to get an emergency pod up and react to it, and do all of that stuff. So it's just the time of year, pay attention, because news comes out of left field on guys entering the portal, on commitments. It's a more volatile environment than high school recruiting, which takes place over a longer period of time. This is quick and, can be impulsive, although you don't want it to be as impulsive, but stuff can happen quickly. So just keep your eyes peeled and we'll all react to it together if and when stuff happens. And hopefully for all of us, stuff happens sooner rather than later. All right, to Greg. I'd like to talk more about being built to win the Big Ten versus in the NCAA tournament. And do we think it's worth settling for 3 or 4 in the league to have a shot at Final Fours? How do we as fans find that balance? How do you view that, Coach? Because you do need to be able to navigate a Big Ten season. But I think we've seen that there are different things that work in the Big Ten and the NCAA tournament. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but they don't always fit perfectly together. So how do you approach that from a roster building standpoint?
I mean, it's Indiana. It's about the tournament. For me, it's about banners. I want to see 2 or 3 more before I'm done in this world. Because it was fun. It was fun in 1987 being in the fountain. Kissing all those ladies. For a guy like me, that was a great experience.
Did you see in our community there was a whole thread of guys talking about how they were in the fountain? I was like, were there any girls there? Was it just all dudes in the fountain in 87?
It might have been. Who knows? It was quite the celebration. But it is interesting because of the style of the Big Ten play. But it's about guards and it's about dudes. If you learned anything about the NCAA tournament, it is you have to have a combination of inside and outside, but you have to have guards. If you don't have 2 or 3 guards to move the ball, shoot the ball, drive the ball, you are not going to be as successful. I don't care how talented your post player is. That's just college basketball. What the Big Ten does is they all get big guys and not enough guards, and then they play each other, and someone wins the conference and the tournament, and then they don't win in the NCAA tournament, and then everyone's mad at good coaches. I just think it's a style of play. Painter comes out today in an article I've tagged. I want to go read. He said we need more team quickness. Yeah, you do. Iowa does. Wisconsin does. Indiana does. The whole Big Ten does. So for me, it's no-brainer. The Big Ten's nice. I want to win Big Ten championships. I want to win the Big Ten tournament sometime. That would be great. But you know what? After you cut down the net on Sunday, I don't want to lose to the 16 seed. We won't, but Big Ten teams kind of do at times. So for me, the answer to that question is the ultimate. You want to be in Final Fours and cut down net at the regional to get to the Final Four, and you want to ultimately have a chance to win a banner. You play to win championships at the highest level. You'll settle for some along the way, but I think you can be, out in front of a conference shift if you do that as well, because then people are going to try to play catch up to you, and then next thing you know, maybe the conference is a little more pleasing to watch.
I wonder what would have given Painter the idea that they needed more quickness. Was there a recent result?
Your T-shirt.
That's right. Oh, that really is the gift that keeps on
FDU.
giving. Yeah. All right, here's a fun.
That's all I'm going to say, Jared, when I go to Lafayette and people just start talking Purdue bad. I'm going to say FDU. And I might leave out the D every once in a while to those Purdue fans.
Oh, that's great. All right, from Kara. Here's a fun question instead of a basketball question, a fun fan question. You have a table for 6 tonight at your favorite Bloomington restaurant, and you can invite one IU coach and 4 players. Which restaurant are you going to, and who do you invite? You can invite past or current coach or players and assume when you ask that they will say yes, and I'll join you. So Kara's one of the 6. She'll be there with us. Where are you going, coach, and who are you inviting?
So we have one coach and 4 players, right?
One coach and 4 players, and then us.
So
and
we
Kara.
need 7. We need 7.
Yeah, so I guess 7.
Right.
Yeah.
7, 8. We the 2 of us. Okay, I'm going. Obviously, Coach Knight.
Yes.
Obviously, Coach Knight, and glad that he's well. By the way, he had a stint in the hospital. We wish him well. And it was good to see people reach out and wish him well on social media and all that stuff too. So my 4 players: Quinn Buckner, no surprise to anyone who's listened to me. Victor Oladipo. Ray Tolbert, and Calbert Chaney. And we're going to Little
Nice.
Zagreb's.
Okay. And what are you going to talk about? Like, do you have a?
I'm not talking about anything. I'm listening. I ain't saying a damn thing. I'm saying, fellas, tell me everything. And I'm just going to listen to them talk back and forth. Because everyone except Victor played.
Yeah.
Everyone except Victor played. But then if I had to ask a question of Victor, it's like, could you have played for Knight? And then I'd love to hear Knight's answer. That would just be beautiful. Him talking about Victor and, jabbing him a little bit. Yeah. So Quinn was the ultimate point guard for me. Ray Tolbert was an unsung, the 6'9" dunker at the time in the 81. And then Calbert's Calbert, right? Hard to narrow it down to these 4, but I think that would be a great conversation piece, young and old, combined with a great coach.
So hard. I'd probably go to Zagreb's too. Although there's so many options. I would call Galen and have him. We'd work through together what would be the best restaurant. Probably spend about an hour talking it through with him. But Coach Knight would be my coach. And man, it was really hard. Like, I want to invite Jay Edwards and like all these other guys, but ultimately I would go Calbert, Greg Graham, Matt Nover, and Alan Henderson to talk about the 92 and 93 seasons, talk about their experience with Blue Chips and just everything that happened that year. Because that's my IU basketball wheelhouse. Those are my 2 favorite teams. And then we could drink Alan Henderson's bourbon as well as we go late into the night, drinking bourbon, swapping stories. It's a great question and it's a tough question because you immediately start thinking about all the guys that you left off. It would be great to have Branch McCracken, and bring like Don Schlunt and Slick Leonard and Bill Garrett and some of those guys on there and talk about those old stories. It'd be great to have guys from the 75 and 76 team to talk about that, just incredible run that they had. So, that's the thing with Indiana basketball. There's so many eras and players and coaches and stories that you could go to. But I think ultimately the little kid in me would have to do it with those guys.
I think I may.
And I left out Damon.
Yeah,
there's
just so many. I think I'm for sure have told this story before, but I worked basketball camps when I first was becoming a coach in 91, 92, and we'd go out every night and 3 nights in a row till like 3 or 4 in the morning, then up at 7 coaching basketball. It was just torturous, right? So the last night I'm like, guys, I can't go out. I'm going to sleep. I'm going to go home. My wife was pregnant at the time. And so the guys come back in at 3 or 4, wake me up. I'm like, yeah, Quinn Buckner bought dinner and sat around all night long. I missed my opportunity to hang out with my guy because I was being, I guess, responsible. But I was that close to having dinner and sitting around listening to stories from Quinn Buckner that night.
Okay, how does no one text you? and say like, Coach, you got to get back here.
Jared, that was before texting
geez.
was even invented.
How does someone
90
not send a carrier pigeon to fly over to you?
Come on, man. What kind of question is that?
That's right. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it would have been a carrier pigeon.
That is funny. All right, let's just hit a few more because we should get rested. Who are we truly serious about as transfers? We talked through that. X's eligibility, we talked through that. Just waiting a couple weeks. Being patient, concern level, I have 0 concern right now. I'm like at a 1 just because we have a lot of open spots. I won't say 0. But I still feel pretty good and optimistic, and I think there's plenty of evidence. Like I don't think you need to just throw on crimson colored glasses to feel optimistic. I think there's real evidence for reasons to be good. This question from Alex. Okay, of the 2 players visiting campus this week, which one would you prefer a commitment from if you could only have one? I don't know. I mean, I really like Ledlum and everything he brings. But I think finding a guy who's whatever Ware is, 7'1", who can shoot, who can do all the things and that has the ceiling that he has, I think you got to take a chance on that. And I'll tell you the other thing that I forgot to mention this with Matt is, so Oregon, I mean, Dana Altman called him out hardcore this year for like not playing. I mean, Dana Altman, it seemed like he had kind of a weird season. He was calling everybody out this year. I don't know if that's what he normally does, but it just seemed like a weird season at Oregon. But
he needed to call himself out as bad as they played.
Maybe so. But, think about this season, Coach. We had a highly regarded freshman big in Malik Renew. And what was the big thing Woody talked about a lot in November, December, January? He's got to learn how to play hard. And he wasn't afraid to talk about it. Now, I think he dealt with it more delicately publicly than Altman did with Ware, which, gosh, I mean, some of the stuff with Ware almost just seemed mean. But with Malik, Coach was just very matter of fact, and, he had conversations with him about it. And what was the most noticeable thing about Malik in February and March? Even though his production was a little bit up and down and the fouls were up and down, he kicked it into another gear in terms of playing hard. And so you have that experience where Coach Woodson has, dealt with a little bit of that and helped. That certainly gives me confidence that he'll be able to build that relationship and do some of the same with Ware. So I love Ledlum. I really do. And sometimes we talk about these other guys and you kind of forget about Ledlum, but then you go back and watch him and it's like, man, he does so many things in a game that are going to help you win. So I really want to get him. I think he's just a good piece to have. But I mean, that high-end talent, like what do we always talk about? Why doesn't the Big Ten win? They don't have enough high-end talent. Well, here's a high-end talent. It's risk reward. It's boom bust. I think you got to take a chance on it. But the fact that you have Renew and Sparks and some other capable guys who can man the post for you behind him, I think gives you an opportunity now to kind of roll the dice, take a gamble. So give me that guy because we need more McDonald's All-American type players. And at some point, those need to work out. So give me Ware, but I hate the question because I want them both. But this is really just Alex getting back at me for all the times I ask questions in the community, and people are like, "Well, I want like a both or an either or." Yeah. So I get it. You got to pick.
The situation with anyone, whether it had been Love or Ware, you hear some of these things where there's some questions about do they fit into the team or are they those types of things. I think that's where you trust Woodson. I think Woodson's strength is that behind the scenes talking to players. Now, I know we had some guys leave, and it might not connect with everyone or might not advance everyone, but they sure as heck have done wonders for X, who came in with some question marks. You mentioned the growth of Renew, who wasn't playing hard. And I think the general manager, we've talked about this term, the general manager job of college basketball, the behind the scenes, the communication piece. I think Woodson hits that out of the park. And so that's obviously he's an honest communicator. And so whether it be Ware or Love or whoever comes in that we hear some questions or we saw them play at their spot and the coach called them out, those things, I really trust Woodson. If he wants that person, then he's going to feel that he can reach that person. That doesn't mean that's going to be successful because sometimes we as coaches believe this is the right fit and we can get this guy and then it doesn't work out. But I believe Woodson will be able to try, and if it doesn't work out, it's going to be more the player than it is the coach, in my opinion. So for me, you need dudes. You need high-end, talented dudes, and you need them as soon as possible. That's why when we argued and discussed Love last week, I was, you got to roll the dice sometimes. And then next summer at this time, if it doesn't work out, but, McDonald's All-Americans in the transfer portal, that's kind of hard to pass up. But let's not stop at one. Get one and get the other if that's the case, right? So
Absolutely. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us on this week's edition of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, you can join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Thank you to Bob Thompson for producing our music. Thank you to John Ringer of rigdesign.com for designing our logos. And, of course, thank you for listening, and thank you, everybody who was here live tonight. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you next week or a few days from now or tomorrow, whenever. Until then,
take it from me, Robert Johnson. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Here I come. This is Sony.
I mean, this is the time of year when you just never know when the next show is going to come. So I don't want to just say next Thursday. It could be emergency pods, things happening. If we do...
It's speed dating. It's speed show.
It's speed dating. If I decide to, or if we decide to do a show tomorrow, Coach, do you have any availability? Are you in school all day?
Yeah, I'm in school all day.
Do you have like some worksheets that you can give the kids?
I had the master's issue today. I had a doctor's appointment and watched the Masters, so I have to be in school tomorrow.
All right. Well,
I'm available. I'm available at noon.
Okay.
Right around noon, or 2:30 for about a half an hour. So, if you need me.
All right. Well, we will see what Friday brings us. But yeah,
I'll be in Bloomington tomorrow night. I can maybe camp out.
Oh, are you going down tomorrow night?
If there's any breaking news, yeah, baseball. We usually go down. Nice. Brent and I go down Fridays. We're gonna. Baseball team's doing rather well. We're going to go over to Illinois for a weekend series. It's Bart Kaufman Stadium's fantastic to watch baseball, and so yeah, maybe I'll get some scoop from some people down there.
Give us your 45-second assessment of the baseball team this year. What kind of squad do you have?
Fun, lot of fun. Offensively, just really talented. Very rare will we be held down. We were held down the other day at Indiana State 4-0, but this team can flat out hit. Their pitching is suspect, average, below average, probably at best. So they've got to win some games 12-9. But I really like what Coach Mercer's doing. He understands what kind of team they have, and he says if we score more than 6 runs, we're going to win. So we build our pitching staff to hold teams to 6 and under. That's just the staff he has. But I think they're going to be good, and I think they're going to be tournament bound. They're a program in the right direction.
Megan wants to know if you're going to join them for breakfast on Sunday.
I'm not staying all weekend, Megan, but thank you anyway. No, I'm just driving down Friday and driving back. I got Easter in LaPorte, Indiana this weekend, so I'm only in for one game this weekend.
Nice. All righty. Well, this is awesome. It's nice to see so many people here in the off-season interested in this stuff. Whenever we do these off-season shows, my wife is always like, what on earth is there to talk about? Well, with the transfer portal, there's now a lot to talk about, and there's lots of you here making it worthwhile for us to talk about it. So we appreciate that. But yeah, we'll see you guys inside the community and on Twitter. Have a great night. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you soon. Maybe very soon. Who knows?